Hi, my name is Lo, and welcome to the Romance Seriously podcast, where I take a serious look at romantic movies. Today's movie is 2023's Ehrengard, The Art of Seduction, starring Alice Bjerre-Zanden and Mikael Folsgaard. We open in the late 1800s-ish, in the fictional country of Babenhausen, as our heroine, the titular Ehrengard, played by Zanden, fences all through her castle. This sets Ehrengard's character perfectly. Rich, rebellious, alone, and loving it. Concurrently, our hero, Cazot, played by Folsgaard, is painting a Grand Duchess, and it takes about 20 seconds for things to shift from a formal portrait sitting to draw me like one of your French girls. However, Cazot does not follow through, mostly because he likes his head's current position of attached to his body. In typical starving artist fashion, Cazot is behind on the rent, but manages to charm his way out of trouble as he prepares to charm his way into royal favor at an art exhibition. Ehrengard sees the painting of the Grand Duchess and muses that it looks remarkably like her, and yet nothing like her at all. Intrigued, Cazot asks her to elaborate, saying he feels art should be more than literal representation. Ehrengard is intrigued back, but her father whisks her away rather than let her so much as shake hands with the lowly artist. This does nothing to dampen Cazot's fascination, to the point that he pulls out his sketchbook and begins drawing her in the middle of the exhibition. The Grand Duchess interrupts Cazot's reverie, asking who has captured his attention. She's not jealous. In fact, she thrives on the sordid details of others' lives. When Cazot points out Ehrengard to her, she muses that they are a formidable family. But as a young man once told her, a good seduction takes time. In fact, that's why she invited him. The Grand Duchess confides that she and her husband aren't firmly on their thrones. Her husband wasn't a direct descendant of his predecessor, but the victor in a battle of cousins, with Count Marbod in a close second. Now, her husband is ill, and her son, Lothar, cannot inherit unless he's married. Unfortunately, the prince has shown no interest in sex. Yeah, at all. So the Grand Duchess proposes Cazot awaken her son's lusts. Which, I'm going to be honest, sounds like that's going to end up going in an equally unhelpful direction if the goal is bone a woman. Cazot attempts to defer the offer of hands-on sex ed, pimp work, proof that some mothers are way too close to their children, I don't know, but is swayed when the Grand Duchess offers rewards other than money. Seizing the opportunity, he asks that she arrange for him to paint Ehrengard's portrait, which she easily agrees to, so long as Cazot tells her all the details. The next day, Cazot casually approaches Lothar in a classic meet-cute, and attempts to talk up marriage not as imprisonment, but freedom, showing him sketches from Cazot's love life. He manages to impress the prince, and Cazot spends the next few weeks spinning tales of sex and lust that sound like the highest works of art. Again, not sure the homoerotic friendship is the most effective solution here. However, Cazot sets up another meet-cute, this time with the Princess Ludmilla of nearby Liechtenstein. Cazot plays matchmaker, spinning romantic tales to each of them, talking up Ludmilla's beauty and Lothar's sensitivity, so when he leaves them alone together, they immediately start boning. At all times. In all places. Do you people have any idea how hard it was to get grass stains out before washing machines? The Grand Duchess is quite pleased with Cazot's work. She was unable to convince Ehrengard's father to allow him to paint his daughter, but she does invite him to the royal wedding. Unfortunately, that pleasure was short-lived as the new princess is pregnant and due in 4 months. Cazot tries to placate the Duchess, arguing that no one will care in 150 years, and even now, people love people in love. It'll be fine. However, between the act of succession and cousin Marbod still eyeing the throne, Lothar will be disinherited if the truth comes out. Cazot instead suggests sequestering Lothar and Ludmilla, telling the public that the seclusion is for Ludmilla's health and waiting for her to reappear in public until it's been long enough that they can get a little creative with the timeline. Of course, Ludmilla will need a lady-in-waiting, one of such a background that no one will question her selection, but of such character that she won't talk, plus she'd need to be around Ludmilla's age so the poor girl isn't completely isolated. Yes, it's Ehrengard, obviously. And the Grand Duchess immediately calls him out for planning to seduce her. Cazot cops to it immediately, saying that a beautiful woman raised without art is fascinating to him as an artist. The Duchess simply wishes him good luck, Her family are Lutherans, practically Puritans, and military on top of that. He won't charm her. Cazotte simply shrugs the warnings off, and the Duchess proposes a wager. If he seduces Ehrengard, she'll give him a permanent position at court and an artist's residence. If not, he'll, paint the Grand Duchess's portrait again. Ehrengard is quickly recruited for the scheme, as while her father is unimpressed with Cazotte's description of her as a fearless Valkyrie, none of their family has ever turned down their liege. Ehrengard herself quickly agrees, asking only to say goodbye to her fiancé before departing. Cazotte sets up the new household. Ludmilla and Ehrengard quickly bond, but Cazotte makes little progress with his seduction. He manages to crack her shell a bit by waxing poetic about a beautiful early morning mist and its ephemeral nature, and his obvious lack of skill on horseback, but it's cut short when the two are informed Marbod has come for a visit. Cazotte and Lothar manage to keep them out, but Marbod and his wife are not dissuaded. And I don't blame them. There really isn't an unsuspicious way to keep people from seeing someone for months. They end up bribing a local to provide intel. Cazotte writes to the Grand Duchess to inform her of the impending birth of her grandchild, but mostly to spill the tea about his quest for Ehrengard. His seduction is not one of touch or action, but conversation and distant admiration. The Duchess calls bullshit. Cazotte stumbles across Ehrengard bathing in the local lake, and was captivated by the sight. Yes, of a naked Ehrengard, but also the picturesque beauty of the spot in question, and he's inspired to put it on canvas. Ehrengard, though, still has a few secrets of her own, such as a secret visit from her fiancé, Kurt. However, her loyalty to the throne and her own friendship with Ludmilla means that she sends him away fairly quickly and refuses to say anything. Ludmilla gives birth, much to the delight of everyone. Babies are hard to resist, after all, and even the Grand Duchess is much less, thank God, an heir, and much more, grandbaby! She and Cazotte discuss their bet, and the Duchess can easily see that Cazotte is starting to be seduced by Ehrengard, not the other way around. The Marbods return to the village, learning from their source that a local woman has been hired as a wet nurse. Ehrengard runs into Cazotte one morning after her daily swim in the lake, which he has been painting for weeks. He claims to have been painting in the woods, but his description of the darkness overtaking light intrigues Ehrengard enough that she wants to see the painting. Cazotte tries to deflect her, claiming it's romantic drivel, but Ehrengard is still curious, and in his efforts to keep her from seeing the nude portrait, the two grasp hands. The first time they've ever touched, and it affects them both. However, the charged moment is interrupted when Cazotte is informed that the Grand Duchess has returned. The Marbods insist on visiting Ludmilla, and as their family, there isn't really a good way to say no. Luckily, the Duchess has managed to keep them out of the castle, and the household will instead have a picnic, so they at least won't have to worry about the baby crying. Get some pillows for Ludmilla's belly, and it should work. Hopefully. Maybe. Now that business is out of the way, they settle down for some tea. Cazotte remarks that he knows the Duchess must be wondering why Cazotte doesn't simply seduce Ehrengard the old-fashioned way, which she is, but he chalks it up to his artistic nature. He is engrossed with the creation of masterpieces, and this, seducing Ehrengard without getting physical, is its own form of masterpiece. He could use sex to win her, but it would feel hollow. The Grand Duchess continues to call bullshit, claiming he just wants to change the rules so he can win the bet, but Cazotte is adamant that he still wants to seduce Ehrengard, but in a manner where she is the only person who will know. Until he shows her his painting, at which point she will be so overcome as to collapse and provide proof. The Grand Duchess agrees to the new terms. Unfortunately, Ehrengard overhears the whole thing. She goes to Cazotte's studio and finds said painting, and nude sketches of her, and other women. Needless to say, she is not happy and storms off into the woods, wherein she finds the wet nurse's husband drunk and wailing for his wife. And honestly, given how clingy and codependent he is, I see why she left him. He confesses to Ehrengard that he is supposed to take the child from the castle and bring it to a clearing, but he wants to speak to his wife first. Ehrengard, thinking quickly, tells him to proceed as planned, but not to tell anyone. The next morning, Ehrengard isn't at the lake. When Cazotte returns to the house, as everyone is preparing for the Marbods' visit, she confronts him, telling him that she always knew he was there, and would like him to finish the portrait. She couldn't today, as the visit took priority, but offers to pose for it in his chambers, and in one conversation, the balance of power between the two has utterly shifted. At the picnic, things shuffle along as best they can when most people are engaging in a conspiracy. 2 others are trying to prove said conspiracy, one's entire brain is occupied by feral horniness, and another is running 2 schemes, one professional and one personal, simultaneously. So, awkward as fuck. The kidnapping ploy regretfully works as intended, with the husband making off with the baby, and the nurse following frantically. Ehrengard mounts her horse, ready and waiting for this moment, and gives chase, with Cazot chasing her. He's still not much of a horseman, but he is doing his best. The Marbolds and Grand Duchess each follow via carriage, all passing by a contingent of soldiers that includes Ehrengard's fiancé. Everybody ends up in the local inn, the baby back in the care of the nurse. Marbold tries to claim victory over the Duchess, but Ehrengard indignantly asks what he means. "That's her baby, fuck you very much. Now, Cazot, take our kid back to the castle and away from these psychos." The Grand Duchess and Cazot immediately play along, including scoffing at Marbold's demands for proof, which, yeah. Don't know how anyone would be expected to prove that back in the day. But Ehrengard planned for that too, telling Cazot to show them his sketchbook, which she had placed in his pocket during their morning conversation. The one thing she didn't plan for, though, was her fiancé wondering what the hell was going on and investigating. But even then, she sticks to her guns and shows off the sketchbook of nudes, proving the affair between Cazot and herself. Cazot has such a visceral reaction that he ends up fainting. Alas, as Ehrengard's fiancé is still in the room, he is awoken to a dueling challenge. Cazot gamely goes ahead with the duel, despite having no idea what he's doing and still trying to talk things out. He ends up accidentally shooting himself in the foot, but Ehrengard shows up before anyone actually dies and makes peace with her fiancé. Months later, the prince is christened. Ehrengard has been honored for distinguished service to the royal family. Cazot makes good on his bet before moving to Rome and refining his talents, both artistic and seductive, where he receives a new nickname, Casanova. Ehrengard, The Art of Seduction, is well named. It is definitely romantic, and both leads do have happily ever afters, but it subverts a lot of common tropes in ways that feel almost fantastical in how realistic they are. Ehrengard, the sweet ingenue, does not fall for the charming rake. She stays with her loving, loyal fiancé. She does not forgive the dude who attempted to manipulate her for a bet. Cazot might have become obsessed with Ehrengard, but he doesn't magically change his ways. Sometimes little white lies do need to be told for the greater good. And everyone leaves the film much as they started it, if a little wiser from the experience life tends to give. Honestly, my favorite thing about Ehrengard is that nobody in this movie brings up love. This movie is about lust and passion, and it stays in its lane. It's almost surprising. I have seen so many movies where people confess their genuine, sincere, bottom-of-the-heart love to someone they met days ago, and we, the audience, are supposed to believe that. And we usually do, it's part of the fun. But Ehrengard and Cazot spend months isolated together, which would presumably facilitate a stronger relationship, but no. Distant friendship and obsessive lust is where things start and end. As for Ehrengard herself, despite being the title character and Zenden having top billing, we know very little about her. Which makes sense because this is really Cazot's film, and he knows very little about her. He is fascinated by her, and that fascination turns to obsession, but with the image of Ehrengard, not Ehrengard herself. It's not that he doesn't care about her as a person, it's that that's not particularly relevant. See how he reacts whenever Ehrengard asserts herself rather than playing the role of the quiet ingenue, as if he's looking at a completely different person, while the audience knows this cunning, capable woman with a spine of steel is who Ehrengard truly is. It's a shame we don't get to see much of the real Ehrengard because she's a badass. She's even able to work revenge on Cazot into her foiling of the baby napping. I kind of love the friendship between Cazot and the Grand Duchess. They're just so utterly on the same page about drama, passion, and life that it transcends age, rank, and gender. It would be easy to paint them as callous and manipulative, but they're so honest and well-intentioned about their manipulations that they come off as charmingly genuine. They are the people who absolutely mean well and sincerely want the best for everyone, and are just nudging people along when they need it. That really is Cazot's saving grace. He is so close to skeevy the whole time. And yet, his sincere artist's devotion to passion and beauty allow him to remain likable. He's not talking out of his ass to get girls into bed. He means every word of his rambling, poetic, waxing rhapsodics. An early morning view does take his breath away. He does value the process as much as the end result, and he doesn't take it personally when he doesn't get everything he wants. The man is the embodiment of no ask, no get, and despite his manipulations, is fundamentally honest in a way that makes him very hard to dislike. And now for the most important question. Was anyone going to tell me the Queen of Denmark has a sideline as a costume and set designer, or was I supposed to learn that from a trailer? Seriously, Queen Marguerite II has done a lot of costume design for the Royal Danish Ballet, decoupage set design for multiple films, and did the illustrations for the Danish version of Lord of the Rings, which she submitted under a pseudonym, so she knew she got the job on merit. She's been a very well-loved queen for most of her life, but damn, I think she might have been wasted on the throne. The sets look faintly artificial, but in a deliberate way. The wide shots in particular look like paper, reinforcing the fictional setting by bringing to mind a doll's house or a book of fairy tales. Beautiful, romantic, but so immaculately created that the artificiality cannot help but poke through. I'd guesstimate the era as the 1840s to 50s, but that's based solely on clothing, and I'm better with British fashion history. The costuming itself is absolutely top-notch. Ehrengard spends the movie in loose, baggy clothing with insane shoulder poofs. Ludmilla's are usually form-fitting, and the Grand Duchess has the same massive shoulder poofs as Ehrengard, but her bodices are both low-cut and form-fitting, emphasizing that both Ludmilla and the Duchess are aware of their bodies and sexualities. Ehrengard's dresses, on the other hand, look like they have stuffing between the layers, suggesting the general idea of a person rather than giving away anything about Ehrengard herself. She keeps the world out, and that's how she likes it. There's also quite a few comments made about the state of Cazotte's clothing, particularly by the Marbauds. These serve mainly to highlight the privilege and elitism of the Marbauds. His clothing doesn't look worn out, just worn. While they, and the rest of the aristocratic characters, have enough money to get new clothing whenever anything shows wear and tear, Cazotte works for a living, and thus has to mend his. It arguably adds to his charms, giving him an appearance of being broken in and homey against the unnatural perfection of the upper class. He looks approachable, while everybody else puts you a bit on edge. Where the costuming really shines, though, is the color palettes. Every character is given their own signature color, and every signature color illustrates a great deal about each character. Ludmilla's is pink, feminine, sweet, and the pale colors add a maternal touch. The Duchess is in blues and greens, but always in jewel tones. Expensive colors that draw the eye and keep the attention on her. She is the power in every room, and she knows it. Cazotte is all earth tones, browns, greens, indicating his more down-to-earth nature, as well as his lack of standing. His clothing is brown to help hide the dirt because his actually gets dirty. And then there's the white. There's so much white in this movie. It's both Lothar and Ehrengard's color, for the same reason. White is purity. Even after taking to sex, Lothar remains a very pure love for Ludmilla, showing genuine, sincere passion for her at every opportunity. Plus, the white and pink together further the visuals of something fairy tale-esque. As for Ehrengard, look, I know the Virgin in a white dress is classic symbolism, and it does work, particularly with furthering Cazette's obsession. But she's such a visual character for this movie, and she's in white for so much of it that it kind of starts to feel lazy, especially given the subversion of Lothar's usage of white representing a purity of spirit rather than body. And yet, this makes the occasions when she's in blue stand out even more. It's not pale, girlish blue either, but deep blue akin to the Duchess, and these moments, the morning ride, the picnic, and the duel, are the times when Ehrengard unambiguously has the power in a situation. However, the construction remains the same, loose, flowing, and padded. Ehrengard, with power, is still Ehrengard. I can't say I don't get it, or it doesn't work, but using pale blue would still allow for the juxtaposition, emphasizing her goodness, high classic association with the Virgin Mary, and making it clearer that Casalt's obsession with Ehrengard is based on a girl who doesn't exist. Ehrengard, The Art of Seduction is not a typical romance. It's reality wrapped in fantasy, using that fiction to drive points home about passion and obsession in a way that feels just as sweet as a love story. But this is not a love story. Love doesn't factor much in here. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, review, all those good things. Or find me at the Romance Seriously Podcast at gmail.com or romancesrsly on Twitter. See you next time.